Show courtesy of Awesemo.com is up and running. We always got to wait and double check. I think we are good. So let's assume we are live. Chat, let me know if you can see us. Always like a little help there. We had a little snafu, and it wasn't my or Adam's fault because we were here on time for like the first time ever. And I pushed the button at 10:59 and it didn't work. So here we are. We're coming to you on an NFL wildcard weekend. We're going to talk some NBA strategy here. I'm laughing and excited. My wife's downstairs putting the old Christmas decorations away. I've been working on the NFL articles. By the way, we've got a bunch on the front page covering wildcard weekend. We have from the slot, we've got a free Yahoo article. If you want to check that out, it can tell you how to get your $30 deposit bonus with your first deposit over there on Yahoo. Promo code Awesemo is the hint. But we've got that up there. We've got single game slate contents for the night game tonight. I'm just finishing up the article for the night game tomorrow, which is not really the night game. It's the 4:40 game. And Adam's going to be writing the deep dive behind the article. So let's start off and let's make this a good one, Adam. So here is the first question of the day. Chat, we're gonna ask you to vote on this. So answer one, that Memphis lost to Brooklyn. Is that the strangest thing today? Answer two, that Kyle Anderson got his first career triple-double in that game. Or answer three, that it's Adam Scherer's birthday. So there we are. Those are your three things. What is the strangest thing today? One, Memphis losing to Brooklyn. Two, Kyle Anderson with the triple-double. Or three, Ship My Money's birthday. So let's look at the slate here, Adam, as they're messing around with that. We have a 7-gamer. It's starting at 7 o'clock tonight, I believe. Last night was an odd start. It was a 7:30 start time. We don't see too many of those throughout the season on Fridays. But I do know there is a 5 o'clock game, and just double checking, it is a 7 o'clock game tonight. Things are spread out kind of nicely. We have a 7, a 7:30, an 8, two 8:30s, and two 10 o'clock games. So we've got, of course, got the late night hammer. If you are looking to do anything over there on Yahoo, their contest filled up already. They're rake-free contests, so you'll want to keep that in mind. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Thrive Fantasy today because they, of course, are the main sponsor of the DFS strategy show. So if you want to check out them, I will be putting in the information for their promo in the chat shortly. Adam, let's start off here with our first game before I am off and running behind the scenes. So let's go over here. We've got Utah and Detroit. Now this one is, of course, going to be a little bit interesting. Some of the pricing is quite appealing for Detroit, particularly Drummond over there on DraftKings. Going to be a tough matchup. He is facing off against Rudy Gobert, but we did see as we were looking through the Early Bird podcast that he did have an 80-point fantasy game last year against Rudy Gobert. So there is apparently a ceiling as long as he can stay out of foul trouble. What do you like here from the Motor City Madmen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a really unappealing matchup for Detroit facing Utah here. But you mentioned the price tag specifically on DraftKings for Andre Drummond at $7,900. And I do think that stands out. You know, it's a tough matchup for sure, but it's just like one of the lowest price points that you're ever really going to get on Drummond. And he's a good enough rebounder that, you know, Gobert being there, it's a deterrent, but it's not, you know, the end of the world. And it's not like Drummond really has a really significant offensive game outside of, you know, putbacks and just stuff around the basket. So I think the price tag's probably a little bit too cheap, especially in tournaments where you're, you know, just more concerned about upside than anything else. Also with Zaza out, I just think there's a little bit better chance that you get another like 36-minute game from Drummond than him in that 32 to 34-minute range. It's not really a matchup where I expect that they're going to want to have John Lure on the floor all that much. So, you know, I think the price tag is really, really nice on him. You know, Blake at 8,400 is not as appealing to me. He obviously can go out there and have a big game anytime, but it just is more correctly priced, whereas Drummond, I think, just really gives you a nice ceiling at 7,900.
All right. It's that tough one. What do we do with Blake? What do we do with Drummond? But I think you're right. Today it does feel like Drummond gets the slight nod. Looking to the backcourt here of Detroit, we of course have Reggie Jackson at a reasonable $5,000 on DraftKings. Reggie Bullock is dipped down to $3,900, and we know that he is very, very, very points dependent. But $3,900, as we do our little quest for value, we're going to have to figure that out. And we do know that Stanley Johnson should be playing today. He has been dealing with a bruised quad. So does that crowd things out for you with the rest of Detroit, or do you think we can find some diamonds in the rough here?
It's tough for me to get to Bullock just because they do have so many wings in their rotation right now. You have Bruce Brown and Luke Kennard basically splitting minutes at one of the wing positions, but then you still have Langston Galloway getting minutes. You have Stanley Johnson, who primarily backs up Blake Griffin, but could potentially take a couple of minutes away from Bullock as well. So that combined with the difficult matchup, I'm not looking to go there. I do think Reggie Jackson's somewhat appealing, kind of for the same reasons as Drummond. He plays, anywhere between 28 and 32 minutes. His production, on a 99 basis is inconsistent, but he does give you some upside at only 5,600 on FanDuel and 5K on DraftKings. Not a priority for me, but behind Drummond, he would be the guy that I expect I'd get the second most of from Detroit.
All right, I'm just loading up into Fantasy Cruncher. We have the Osmo proprietary ownership projections are posted, so I want to see what we get with that and see who's popping here from this particular game. While we're waiting for this first one here, I'll do the DK one first, and then I'll get the other site set up. We've got reminder, the promo code DFS strategy if you want to get a free behind-the-scenes look at all things premium at Osmo.com. So all you have to do is go to Osmo.com, go up to the upper right, click the join tab, fill out your information, choose a package, any package, pick one with the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, and use the promo code DFS strategy. It'll be the last field you fill out, and you will get 7 free days of whatever package you choose. So go ahead and pick a big one. Check it out. Your billing won't start for 7 free days, and if you cancel anytime in those 7 days, you're still going to get the 7 days of access, and you won't get billed for it, so you can decide. But come on, you're going to want to dip behind the paywall here because it's where all the fun happens, particularly in Slack. All right, this looks like this has run. We are not getting very many from this game, so let's filter.
I would hope not.
We are getting 21% Rubio, 21% Reggie Jackson, and 22% Andre Drummond. That is it. That allows us to pivot on over here to Rubio. What are your thoughts at him, particularly reasonable price at $5,800 on DraftKings? He's been dealing with a myriad of injuries, sore back, sore lower legs, etc., but he should be good to go in this one.
Much more appealing price tag again on DraftKings than FanDuel, which, to be fair, is something we've been saying basically all season long about a lot of players. But yeah, I mean, 6,900 on FanDuel's not really that appealing. Detroit, not a bad defensive team. They don't play fast. It's a game that, more often than not is going to just play out as, a half court style game with two, one really good defensive team and one perfectly fine defensive team. So if I get some Rubio, that's fine. But I think that there's going to be better plays later on.
All right, let's look up and down. How do you feel about returning Derek Favors? Had a little bit of time to sleep on it. I'm not quite as intrigued by it as I was last night. Anybody in the front court, Gobert, or is there just, as you said, better options elsewhere for that kind of a price?
I like Gobert. I mean, he just has been playing incredibly well on a permanent basis, averaging nearly 1.3 fantasy points per minute since the start of December, rebounding really well. Obviously a really efficient scorer, so you don't need a high usage rate from him. When he shoots, it goes in. So I think that, at a $7,500 price tag, probably getting 34 to 36 minutes here against Drummond, it's a really good spot for him. And I think what you said, Drummond was projected for like 21% ownership.
Correct.
What's Gobert at?
Now I've got to go back to that page, or that was what it was when I ran.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. My point was just going to be that if one of them is going to be much lower owned than the other one, I would much rather just play the lower owned one.
I'm running another crunch, so our mileage may vary here. My computer doesn't like running the show and the crunches at the same time, but we do have un momento, and we will get this, because once I get it set up for this, it'll be good going forward for the remainder of the show. So let's see what we have. We are listing Drummond at 19. We are listing Gobert at 13.
Yeah, I mean, I would just rather play the lower end of the two.
Okay. Anything else from this contest?
No.
All right. Dallas and Philadelphia. Hey, did you know that it appears that Jimmy Butler could be a bit of a malcontent and potentially a dancer in a locker room? He's already angling for that next contract. He doesn't like the free-flowing offense there in Philadelphia. He wants more pick and roll. I was reading a couple articles that both referenced him wanting to be more like James Harden, which of course is a tall order. I mean, come on, guy. He's going to be a free agent next year. Philly can give him the most money because he's on their team, but he can be going, for the lesser max option from other teams there. What the hell is going on with him? And he was sick. So do you think he's going to be sick, air quotes again today, or do you think he's going to play? And let's first proceed if he is playing.
Yeah, I mean, right now I have him projected out just because him and Chandler both missed practice yesterday. They both missed the game against Phoenix. So, my guess is that they don't, but that's purely a guess. Obviously, it's a good thing that it's a 7:30 game. Hopefully, we have that news before the 7 o'clock lock. If he's in, then he remains, just a marginally appealing play. Obviously, he has some upside, but more often than not, he's going to defer to Joel Embiid offensively. So it's, a perfectly fine play that I'm not too excited about if he's in. If he's out is where it really gets interesting, though, because then you get a nice boost for Joel Embiid to where he rivals James Harden as a top, play in the upper tier. Not saying that he's as appealing as Harden is, but when you factor in price, it's really, really close. So if Butler's out, it gets really tough not to get to Embiid, but also you get a usage bump for Ben Simmons. You probably get a couple more minutes for Ben Simmons, and it makes those guys, much more appealing than they would be if Butler does play.
All right, now that's all right. I think proceeding with him out is an intriguing way to go here. If he's out, who's going to guard Luka Doncic? Let's start there. If Butler's in, is it him? Is it Simmons? Does that impact you either way for the 19-year-old phenom from Dallas?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't really think about individual defensive matchups that much outside of like unique, mostly with bigs and just some other rare situations. Like there's so much transition basketball now that I just find it not really that important.
Okay. So, $1 million question then. How are you feeling about Luka Doncic this evening?
I like him. The price tag has come down, but the important thing is that like if you run numbers with Luka Doncic and Dennis Smith Jr. on the floor for this season, you'll see Doncic's usage rate drop. You'll see his assist percentage come down a bit, but I don't really want to read into that too much because you have to keep in mind that most of those numbers came closer to the beginning of the season when Luka was playing his first NBA games. He hadn't been as assertive offensively as we've seen lately. Since Dennis Smith Jr. returned to the lineup, we've still seen a 30+% usage rate from Luka. He's really just taken over this offense, and so I'm still projecting him to be the guy here. And I think that his price tag coming down to 7,400 on DraftKings makes him really, really appealing in a spot against Philadelphia where I think he should be able to have some success. Plus, he has small forward eligibility over there, which makes him really appealing as well.
All right, moving down to the pivots, we do have DeAndre Jordan here. Not going to be the easiest of matchups for him. However, price is accounting for it, particularly on DraftKings, where we have seen oftentimes the centers being well suppressed from where we would think they ought to be from a point per dollar basis. What do you got for us with regards to DeAndre Jordan?
Yeah, the entire Dallas team is underpriced on DraftKings, but especially Luka and Jordan. Like Jordan's $5,900, should play 32 to 34 minutes. They'll want him out there, against Embiid as much as possible. And as good as Embiid is defensively, it has not been a bad matchup from a fantasy standpoint for opposing centers this year. So I think that the price drop on Jordan really is not warranted. And normally I don't like going to these Dallas guys that much because they tend to play, even the starters, tend to play 32 to 34 minutes, whereas on other teams you can find guys playing 37, 38. But with the price drop here in a reasonably appealing matchup against Philly, I think that Luka and DeAndre both are really, really good plays.
All right, branching out, we do have Dennis Smith Jr., who is, let me double check on Yahoo. I think he's still 11. Indeed, he drum roll please, there's the column. Yep, he is listed at 11. In his last 3 games, he has scored 23, 35, and 14 Yahoo points. Similar scoring to a FanDuel there, 3 points per block and per steal. No bonuses for the double-double, triple-double here. Dennis Smith at 11, is he in play? And then how about on the other sites?
Yeah, at 11, he's in play. It's just too cheap of a price tag, even though, Luka's emergence makes me not like Dennis Smith as much because obviously those shots have to come from somewhere. The ball handling is taken away from someone. And I think that Smith, who already was an inconsistent player, is, just going to be a little bit, even a little bit more difficult to trust now that Luka's doing more. But, at $11, basically the min price on Yahoo, I think that's still really appealing. I would rather play Reggie Jackson on like DraftKings or FanDuel at their prices. But, if you're playing 150 lineups and you get some Dennis Smith, I think that's fine.
All right. Running 100 through the crunch here with the vaunted Josh Engelmann projections. We've got Dennis Smith coming in as the second highest owned player in this crunch of 100. He's coming in at 41%. I set a cap at 60. The highest player happens to be Paul Millsap. We'll get to him because our projections, minutes projections, could vary dramatically on what we want to do with him. But that is intriguing. And then over here we do have Drummond is the third highest guy in the crunch at 38%. He is $34, which is a very favorable price over there on Yahoo. And just checking.
What happens if you take off the game that's not on the slate, the Denver game?
Let me see. That was a good idea. I see what you did there. Thank you. Well played. Well played, Adam. You can call me out. Chat's going to call me out now. Oh, well, the way I have it set up for DraftKings, it doesn't even load those projections. It just puts zeros in. I have not set that up for Yahoo yet, so my bad. Dennis Smith, number 1 at 48. Drummond, number 2 at 33. Drummond drops to number 4 at 33. And then moving to Jaren Jackson takes over that spot there from Paul Millsap at 46%. So there we are. Thank you. So I'll keep that saved so we can refer to this one throughout the way here. We've got the DraftKings one set up. I think we are good from this game. Yes? Yay? Nay?
Harrison Barnes, I think, is fine. He's just cheap, like especially FanDuel. If you need a mid-range small forward, I think getting to Barnes is fine. If you're playing 150 lineups on DraftKings, I think $4,300 Berea is reasonable in tournaments as well. Just don't play him with Dennis Smith Jr.
Now, here's a good one. In the premium chat, they were asking me some questions this morning around breakfast time, talking about how to utilize Fantasy Cruncher with FanDuel, Adam. Now, that's something I don't play I don't mass multi-intro over there on FanDuel, and I just dabble every now and then if they tend to have overlays for basketball. But how do you approach the dropping of the lowest score? And because it's not in Fantasy Cruncher, it doesn't really set up for you to do that, but you can do it manually a few different ways. What is your favorite way of approaching that? Because I know a lot of people are coming up with that question these days.
Yeah, I mean, I think one way to do it is to just set a group of punts and tell it to play one. Make sure obviously you vary them up by position and everything. I tend to just crunch my lineups and then drop the lowest score in Excel and go from there.
Okay. And that makes sense. And so with regarding the how you build or how you would build or upload, it's really not going to affect anything because it just whatever position's the lowest gets dropped. So it's hard to influence it from any other way, right? I mean, just in case I'm missing something here. So the way I recommended was set up the groups of some cheapies, tell it to play one of those, and then set the percentages accordingly so you can feather it throughout the positions as you see fit.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. On to our next game. New Orleans, Cleveland. Cleveland is playing on a back-to-back. They are home for both of them. They will be taking on the Pellies, who are favored by 8.5 points in this one. Anthony Davis, of course, is going to be where the plays begin in this particular one. Nikolai Mirotic has already been ruled out. Again, he has not played since December 12th, so we don't have to worry about anything other than the addition of Elfrid Payton. Now we have Elf who's coming in. He was out with I believe it was a broken finger. I can't remember his finger or his thumb, but he's back. His conditioning apparently was solid because he played just over 30 minutes in his first game back. Adam, first let's talk about Payton, and then we'll talk about Davis and Harden and kind of the overarching strategy for that. But let's ease into it here with Elf, who's no longer on the shelf. Boom, post-holiday dad joke. There you go. That was for your birthday, Adam. That'll be the only one. There's your birthday gift. That's the only one I'm going to do all show.
Thanks, Eva. Yeah, so when we talked about Ricky Rubio and Reggie Jackson, I had mentioned having someone later that I liked more. And Peyton, at basically that same price point, he played almost 34 minutes in their most recent game. Even if I project him for 32 here to try and get more of a median projection, he still projects as a better play than either of Rubio or Jackson for me. Obviously Cleveland's much worse defensively than Utah or Detroit is. They played a really slow pace, and Lofty and I talked about it a bit yesterday, where you have to factor that in. You can't just look at how bad a defense is. You have to also consider how many possessions you're going to get as a team. But they're just such a bad team defensively that even with fewer possessions than normal for New Orleans, I think the price tag's too cheap for Peyton, who, even though he's not a really high usage guy, he does come with enough peripherals, enough assists and rebounding that he should be able to pay off his price tag relatively easily as long as he gets into the 30-minute range again.
All right. Now, the $1 million question that we're going to come to today. It's going to be, do we play James Harden? Do we play Anthony Davis? Do we play both? If you play both, and the only one I've made a little shell lineup for that is over on Yahoo. If you play both those guys, they're the number one most expensive players. You're left with $14 for each of your slots. So it is possible, because all of a sudden you pick up a couple $10 cheapies, and you're looking at about $16 per slot for your last four or so. So it's possible to put out a viable lineup. I expect a fair number of people are going to try that. I have not yet done that for the other sites. But let's talk binary here, Adam. We love Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is phenomenal, especially on sites where we don't have turnovers, because that's where James Harden tends to have a lot, because good God, the ball's in his hand literally on every play where he is on the court. And you get 3 for steals and blocks, and all of a sudden if you get a vintage Anthony Davis game, now he is on the road, so he tends to not quite get as many blocks on the road, phantom scorekeeper, but if he gets 7, 8, 9 combined blocks and steals, all of a sudden he is going to be vying for that top slot regardless of what Harden is doing. Talk a little bit about Anthony Davis and then work into your approach of who you prefer between that duo.
Yeah, so it's obviously a really, really good spot here for Davis going against Cleveland. Tristan Thompson being back makes Cleveland's front court a little bit more formidable, but not that's going to deter me from Davis. It's just a lot of moving pieces right now as far as how to approach this top range, because we're still waiting on the Jimmy Butler news. If Jimmy Butler is out, Joel Embiid is the cheapest out of this group, and he is, he has as much upside as anyone. So that would really complicate things. If Butler's in, then you kind of have Davis and Harden separated from Embiid, and it really just comes down to ownership, because I still think Harden's the best play. Like there's a $500 or $600 difference between Davis and Harden. Harden is averaging 1.7 to 1.8 fantasy points per minute in this situation. Davis, you're going to get around 1.6. They play similar minutes. So I think Harden's the better play. But if everyone's going to play Harden after his 90-point game his last time out, then Davis still clearly has the upside to beat Harden any given night. So it's just a lot of moving pieces, and I think it's obviously one of the keys to the slate, but it's tough to have any sort of relevant opinion on it this early, because it depends on what everyone else is going to do.
All right, so back to the matchup at hand, back to the New Orleans side of the player pool. We know Davis is good. Mileage may vary on strategies, etc. But we do have we do know that Mirotic again is out, so we have Julius Randle here in a lovely matchup where he will be seeing most likely a little Larry Nance, potentially some Tristan Thompson, depending on what the Cavs are going to do here. This feels like a very nice spot for him. He seems to be mostly priced appropriately. How do you feel about Julius Randle?
Yeah, I mean his price tag's finally come up a little bit. Obviously not a ton, but if you just kind of look back over the last few games, he's gradually increased from like that low $7,000 range up to 8,200 on DraftKings, which was the site where I'd been playing him the most anyway. At the center position on FanDuel, it had never been as appealing. So now it's more of a spot where if I get to him, I think it's fine, but he projects as a good but not great play, especially when you factor in the other plays on this New Orleans team. Obviously Davis we like a lot, but and Peyton we talked about, but also Drew Holiday's price tag has come down. He loses some appeal with Peyton back, but probably not enough that he should be like plummeting in price tag. So it just becomes tougher to prioritize Randall when you're factoring in that you're probably not playing 3 or 4 guys from the Pelicans.
All right. Moving over to Cleveland here, I am looking at FanDuel. I did the crunch of 150. I'm coming up with 30%, 36% here of Mr. Larry Nance Jr. How are you feeling about Larry Nance Jr. in this matchup? They're going to all bigs on deck for Cleveland tonight.
Yeah, so Nance rejoined the starting lineup last night alongside Tristan Thompson, which is good for his minutes. It's not good for his per minute productivity, but minutes are minutes. So that it's certainly an interesting spot. His price tag's pretty quickly fallen with Thompson coming back. If you're going to get, he played 30 and a half minutes last night, lost a few minutes to the blowout. If you're going to get 34 minutes from Larry Nance here at 6,100 on DraftKings, it becomes a really really appealing play. Even if I project him for 32 minutes, he comes out as a good play. So as long as he remains in the starting lineup, I think that he'll be a good play. You just want to make sure that whatever projections you're using, you want to make sure that you're accounting for him playing his minutes alongside Tristan Thompson and not at center, because at least yesterday he got 0 minutes or almost 0 minutes as the backup center. He essentially was just playing all of his time alongside Tristan Thompson, which means fewer rebounds, lower usage percentage, and the lower assist percentage for Nance. I haven't run the numbers on it today, but I had run them a couple of games ago, and it was basically like without Tristan Thompson on the floor, Larry Nance was averaging a little over 1.1 fantasy point per minute this year. Alongside Thompson, he averages like 0.85. So if he's going to play 30 plus minutes at 0.85 points per minute, it's still a good play. It's just not the jam him into every lineup play that it would be if Tristan Thompson were out.
And this is where it's a little bit interesting between the sites. On DraftKings, we have him at projected for 4% for his popularity. I'm getting 1% in my crunch. If I go over and look at FanDuel, we're projecting him all the way at 29% for popularity, and I ended up with 36% in my crunch. So this is going to vary by site quite dramatically, it seems. So if you are playing on multiple sites, do remember you can get pieces of these different players on different sites as you try to construct your balanced risk basket.
Also, if Tristan Thompson were to sit the second half of a back-to-back, then it just becomes a unbelievable spot for Larry Nance.
Okay, excellent point there, because this will be his third game back, right, for Thompson, or second?
Third.
Okay.
And also, like I do expect Nance to start again. Obviously he started against the big front court last night with Favors and Gobert, but you have Randall and Davis tonight, so I expect we'll see the same thing.
All right. One question somebody was asking. Let's see if I can find it. They're asking Eton Moore. I thought they said we had him at 29%. We have him at 11 on DraftKings. He's coming up in 1% of my crunches. His price has come down there, of course, with Elf back. Just could lose a few minutes. Elf doesn't shoot very often, so it's not like he would really lose the shot attempts. Let me see if we're referring to FanDuel here. No. Okay. I don't know what. Oh, 28% on FanDuel. There we go. Yeah, I'm getting him on 20% of the crunches there.
If you get to Eton Moore, it's fine. It's not someone that you should be prioritizing, but it's not someone that you should be like avoiding either. It's a good spot. He'll probably do enough to get by and not enough to win you a tournament.
What a rousing statement there, but also very true. Boy, here's a one that you would have normally been a slog, Adam. We're moving on here to Memphis and San Antonio. Both of these teams, just Memphis is on a back-to-back. They were home last night. They were on the road into San Antonio. San Antonio, of course, played that spirited, emotional game against Toronto on Thursday. We've got a 203.5 over-under for these teams, and while that is the lowest of the slate, that is probably about 10 points higher, maybe even 15 points higher of what it would have been in the Tim Duncan years. Start us off here with Memphis on the back-to-back. Now, we do have Kyle Anderson, who is coming off his triple-double. We should have the addition potentially. Stick around for news, but he's projected at this point to play. That would be Justin Holiday, the new acquisition from the Chicago Bulls. Of course, that means Selden and one of the Brooks. You'll have to ask Ernie Grunfeld for clarification on which one it is, but they're out of the picture. What do you want to do here with the Memphis Grizzlies on a back-to-back with a potential new addition coming in on the wing?
Not a whole lot. I mean, it's just it's two very good defensive teams. It's two slow teams. It's not an appealing game at all. The one thing I guess worth mentioning is that the price tags on DraftKings, where they do adjust for a defensive matchup a little bit more than FanDuel does. Like, you have $7,200 Marc Gasol and $7,100 Mike Conley. They certainly can outperform those price tags. It's just that, they still project to be guys that probably give you, mid 30s. And that's not really what I'm looking for at that price tag in a tournament, even though it's, between 5 and 6X. It's just not what I'm looking for. So they're fine. I probably would get some in 150 lineups, but they're not priorities. Kyle Anderson, I'm interested to see what happens with his minutes once Justin Holiday joins the rotation. They obviously have an abundance of wings already, but we've been seeing Anderson just play huge minutes and everyone else take a back seat. If Justin Holiday starts to eat into those minutes and Anderson goes from playing 34 to 36 to playing like 30, then it's going to make him a lot less appealing. So a little concerned there. Obviously still at less than a 5K price tag, he's someone that you can have some of, but again, I wouldn't be prioritizing him.
All right. I think we're going to pass on the remainder of the Grizz. The Spurs here, it's not overly enticing. Some of the matchup not the easiest. We do know that we have some value, though their prices continue to tick up, being Derek White, Bryn Forbes. We do know that Rudy Gay is most likely to play. His prices dropped somewhat on the different sites. He's down to 5,500 here on DraftKings. Hey, revenge, right? Played for Memphis. Here you go. You want stories? He's got back-to-back. He played for Memphis and Toronto. If only we could get Sacramento here as a third game. What do you want to do here with the Spurs, or is this another kind of stay-away situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's another spot where I'm not overly excited. Memphis is a good team. They play slow. The one thing is that in competitive games, San Antonio does still give DeRozan and Aldridge big minutes. So, 8,300 for DeRozan, if he's going to play 38 minutes, is still appealing. 7,700 is fine for Aldridge. You mentioned Gay's price dropping, though, and I think that's really interesting because last game against Toronto was his first game back from an injury. He only played 23 minutes, and obviously that you could look at that and be concerned about his minutes, but he subbed out of that game in the fourth quarter after picking up his fifth foul with 6.5 minutes to go, almost 7 minutes. And it was a game that, for the majority of the game, the Spurs were playing with a 20-plus point lead. So there was no reason to push Rudy Gay's minutes, and he dealt with some fouls. I think that projecting him for 28 to 30 minutes is probably the correct approach here, knowing that some games will play a little less and some games will play a little more. His price tag really just, I don't think, should be falling. This is a guy that is basically a point per minute producer when he plays, and he gives you some upside because he contributes peripherals in addition to having a 20 to 22% usage rate. So while the matchup sucks, I think that, Rudy Gay, probably at low ownership, is a pretty appealing tournament option.
All right, I do have to shout out Kyle Anderson, since he, of course, coming off that triple-double going against his former squad. If you are into that sort of thing. Looking at the crunches here, really nobody is popping for the Spurs. On Yahoo, I've got Aldridge to DeRozan and Davis Bertans at 4%. If I look over here on FanDuel, we've got Bertans at 11% in the crunch. 11% in popularity. DeRozan is 10 in popularity, 5% in the crunch. And then Rudy Gay, 17% in the popularity, just 5% in the crunch here. So you'll want to keep an eye on what is going on with the field, what is going on with your crunches if you are running a lot of lineups, because this is where you can make your stand. You could say, you know what, not really a fan of this particular game. It's going to be slower. I see that I'm coming in below the field. I'm totally good with that. Done and done. One of the guys that you are going to have question with that's popping the highest is on Memphis here, but Jaren Jackson is coming in as the most popular option for Memphis on both the crunches I've run and then a couple of the sites for the popularity. He's about a third or a fifth of what the crunches are. So that might be a stand where you say, yeah, I like it, but do I really need to be 5 or 6 times the field for someone like Jaren Jackson in a game like this? Adam, if you see something like that where you come in, let's say on DraftKings here, we're projecting Jackson at 4%, the crunch says 20%. That's 5 times what he's got here. What would you do? Would you tamp that down? Do you feel 20% is reasonable? It's not a huge egregious overstatement, or does the game like this influence you to lower things?
It depends on what the options are around them. For the most part, I incorporate enough stuff into my lineups that when I get someone at a certain percentage, I am fine with it. I just think that I put enough into creating my lineups that I'm comfortable with where I end up. But like it does matter on who's around them. Like there are certainly times where you could be getting 30% Jaren Jackson, and there's a play that is just as good at just as low ownership that you're getting like none of because of just kind of a mistake. So it's important to pay attention to it. But for me personally, like I just have enough kind of checks in place that if I get that much of somebody, I just play it.
Right, and that's an important thing, because Adam has we do a lot of the podcast. So before air, we talk about, what did you play tonight? What did you end up doing? And Adam has put in a variety of curbs and ways to steer the ownership population to where he wants it to be. Now, those of us that have not yet gotten fancy with Excel or don't have a plan on how to do that, you're going to be eyeballing it, and you're going to want to understand, hey, in something like it's 3x, 5x, 10x in some cases, if it happens to be a low projected player for the evening or the low popularity, what do you do in that situation? So that's something where Adam knows his strategy enough that he's sort of automated it in Excel. But for those of us that are not as nifty at that, we'll want to look at things, double checks that we have. That's what people call their process. So you hear this mythical thing, it's my process. It means, what steps are you doing? Are you following your punch list? Are you doing, if this, then do this religiously? And that's something that's important if you want to survive in today's tough world. DFS. Again, promo code DFS strategy gets you 1 free week of any Osmo premium package that includes Slack. Pick something with the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, you'll get that. And then you can bend the ear of all the people in Slack that are doing this. We have a ton of knowledgeable users that pick apart each other's suggestions, strategies. They're reverse engineering different things, seeing what the superstars of DFS are doing and how they're getting on certain plays that our guys were missing, and they're figuring out how to not miss them going forward. So it's a lot of fun there in the Slack. Anything else from this game, Adam, or shall we move on to Toronto and Milwaukee?
No, let's go to the Toronto game.
Milwaukee on a back-to-back. Both were home. They did play last night. They will be taking on the Toronto Raptors. Milwaukee favored by 5. Just looking up and down here, it does not seem like we have anybody to worry about from an injury standpoint. Of course, Kyle Lowry not going to play, and then Jonas Valanciunas is not either. What do you want to look at here from the Toronto side? And of course that means we do have to mention Fred VanVleet. You can join the Fred VanVleet fan club. It's $1. I have to play him. You guys do not have to. We're going for 40 tonight. It's for fun. You can make fun of me on Twitter. If you're in the premium chat, you can make fun of me there, but gets a little engagement. It's only $1, plus the trash talk is well worth it. What are you looking at from the Toronto backcourt, which we've seen Lowry missed 9 of the last 10 games, so we kind of know what they're going to do here.
Right. I'm expecting around 34 minutes from VanVleet, give or take a couple. So I'm projecting him at 34. Since Lowry went down, VanVleet has a 19% usage rate, 19.5 assist percentage. the main appeal to him is just that he's out there playing minutes, and you just kind of accrue fantasy points by being on the floor. So it makes him a completely mediocre play to me. If he's going to be really popular like he was last game, it's a pretty easy guy at this price tag to be underweight on, just because there's not a very high percentage that he puts up a score that really hurts you in tournaments. That's not to say that he can't 5x. Like 5x doesn't matter in tournaments, or 5.5x. Like whatever used to matter, years ago, that people still think is value. It doesn't matter. You need guys to really, outproduce their price tags, and Van Vliet's just not a guy with the opportunity or the volatility to do that very often. So if he's really popular, then I'm fine going to other guys. If he's not, then I'm cool being overweight. Like basically wherever I end up on Van Vliet, I'm fine. I think that Peyton's a better play. I think Peyton has a higher ceiling than Van Vliet does. I would put Van Vliet kind of in that same category as like Reggie Jackson, behind Ricky Rubio. The guys that I'm more interested in are in the front court here, with Pascal Siakam, who is playing around 34 minutes a night in competitive games and has really been productive during this time without Lowry. He has a 22% usage rate, but he also has a 14.5% assist percentage, which for context is almost identical to Kawhi Leonard. He has a 13.7% rebounding percentage, which actually is ahead of Ibaka and ahead of Leonard over that stretch. Just playing really, really well. And the price tag hasn't really come up much. So I still like him a lot. And then Kawhi projects as a good play on a point per dollar basis. The issue is that, as we've already talked about, you have expensive guys to deal with on the slate with Harden, Davis, and Embiid all in really good spots. And Kawhi Leonard, while he's not in that same price range, he's still expensive. And if you're prioritizing Leonard, it's going to alter your roster construction. It's going to make it difficult to get up to that group as much as you would like, or to have as strong a lineup around them. So while Leonard projects as a good play, I imagine I won't end up with a ton of him because of that. And also just because in terms of guys with Kawhi Leonard's skill level, and this is something that I talked about before the game against San Antonio, why I thought he was a really bad play at high ownership, he has one of the lowest standard deviations that you're going to find amongst guys at that, of his talent level. And essentially what that means is that when you're talking about him in tournaments, when he outproduces, like he stays closer to his projection, that's basically than other players do. Like Giannis, if you're projecting him for like 63 points, he's going to have that 78 fantasy point game a higher percentage of the time than Kawhi is going to greatly exceed his projection. So it just makes it so he's less likely basically to win you a tournament than other guys in his talent, in his price range and talent level.
Yeah, and I think that's something a lot of people, they don't understand how the volatility works. So you want to the wide range of outcomes means yes, they have good ones, and yes, they'll have some bad ones. If you get somebody that's incredibly extreme, that's a boom bust player. That's not really going to be a good play. You want to find somebody that has the opportunity to go one, maybe two standard deviations tops, and then you feather in a couple of those guys when they're in good matchups. Go with the chalkier lineup build, and that provides enough upside, some safety, and some differentiation from a lot of the field. And that's something that you get to hear on the variety of the DFS strategy shows. We've talked about that a lot in Slack, how it works differently. You have a little more relaxed approach. Even Osmo himself, Alex Baker's popped in and had some comments here and there on what he would do, or we'll set up a situation. He'll come in and say, "Oh, I think this is how I'd play it," and it's just a lot of fun, and it's a different way to learn. And as things get tougher and tougher, particularly for basketball, as one of the quote most projectable sports, you're gonna have to find ways to differentiate your lineups and not be stupid. Because the second you have one bad spot in your lineup, I mean, even though you can drop somebody on FanDuel, if you have one bad spot, you step off the curb, the cement truck hits you. It's no fun. So be careful, be smart, and find some new inventive ways of thinking. And that's something that Adam has been doing on his Deeper Dive article. So he writes them Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Lofty does them Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And they each have a little different spin on how they approach things. Adam tends to, on Saturdays we have the larger slates, but on Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's usually between 4 and 6 games, or 3 and 6 games. So what Adam has been doing on these days, as well as Saturday, has been talking about his projections, where he thinks the minutes are going to be for somebody, and the percentage that they exceed their tournament value. And the what's your other percentage that you put on there?
I include what I have their tournament value at and the
Okay.
percentage that I think they exceed it based on my projections.
Right. Oh, that's right. So it's score, tournament score, and then percent that they'll make the tournament score. And that's something that's been very helpful because you're like, it'd be somebody like you said, the 5X thing. Look, let's use Fred VanVleet as an example. Don't play him. Don't play him. Maybe you play him on FanDuel where you drop him. The only lineup I'm going to have him in on this DraftKings ones is the tournament where I have to play him and you guys don't have to. The reason I'm doing that is I want you guys to see what happens. You already know what one guy's going to do. How do I overcome that, particularly now that his price is up? And it's something I have been able to do some of the time. So, but more often than not, I finish in the bottom 20% of this tournament. So it's something to look at. There's some really good gamers that play in it. A lot of these guys that muck around in the low stakes stuff, but that you recognize their names, they pop in there from time to time. Just have some fun and see what it is. So it's a good learning tool, a good learning example. So anyway, just want to talk about that. Anything else from this game?
Not from the Toronto side.
Okay, let's talk Milwaukee and Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah, kind of the forgotten man on this slate, I think, and I mean for perfectly valid reasons. But it's a tough matchup here against Toronto, especially when you consider the opportunity cost to rostering him is Anthony Davis or James Harden or Joel Embiid. So certainly you can make the argument for him at low ownership, but I just don't think I'll end up getting there because for one, the matchup, like I said, is more difficult, but also you have, and it's really important, like Giannis in his normal rotation is going to play around 34 minutes, maybe in a competitive game where he gets a little extra run, he gets up to 36. We really haven't seen much more than that out of him in competitive games. Whereas you have Davis, who normally is going to play around 38. He can play upwards of 40. Same thing for Harden. Embiid, plays 36. So not only is it a more difficult matchup, and Giannis is playing with a fully healthy team, whereas Davis is playing without Mirotic, Harden's playing without everyone worth anything on his roster, and Embiid potentially is playing without Butler, but you also expect him to play fewer minutes in a tougher matchup. So even when you make the ownership argument, it's tough for me to actually get to Giannis.
All right. Anybody else amongst their secondary plays? Middleton, perhaps Bledsoe, an incredibly cheap, near minimum or minimum George Hill.
Really just secondary options for me. Brogdon, I think, is the most appealing with a $5,500 price tag. I imagine he'll go completely overlooked in tournaments at that same price point as VanVleet. But Brogdon's actually been a higher usage guy lately, averaging nearly a fantasy point per minute. Probably plays around 30 minutes here. So again, not a priority, but just another guy that you have this like group of on DraftKings, looking at their pricing, you have that group of basically mediocre point guards in the $5,500 range, with Rubio and Jackson and Brogdon and VanVleet, and it's just like the perfect opportunity to basically just differ from the field because they're all going to project essentially similarly, essentially the same for all intents and purposes, and there's not going to be a huge edge by just matching the field on guys. So if everyone's playing VanVleet, play the other three guys. If everyone's playing Brogdon, play the other three guys. That's kind of how you should probably be approaching groups of guys that project very similarly like that.
All right, and most of these guys are kind of in that 5-ish% range. For DK, they vary a little bit more on FanDuel, but that's another way you kind of make your stand. If one of them pops up to 10 or 11%, maybe that's the guy you don't play because these guys are not great. I think I'd probably play Rubio would be my favorite of all of them. But
yeah, me too. But like if Rubio were the
guy, then I think I'd go Brogdon.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just
I don't want to play Fred VanVleet. Don't make me play him. Looking at Antetokounmpo, we've got him at a projected 4% popularity on DK. He's not popping up in any of my 150 crunch ups. We have him at 4% on FanDuel. I'm getting him in 3 of my lineups, 1% out of the 150, and then he is coming in on 3%, so 3 out of my 100 Yahoo lineups. If you ever wanted him at a low ownership, today is the day, but you kind of need mediocre games from Harden and Durant, which they're mediocre games, I would say, 55-60 is kind of a Giannis realistic outcome. So how can he pop? You need crappy games from those guys in the 50s.
You need a ton to go right for Giannis to be a good play.
So, all right. There we are, just throwing it out there. On to the next game here. We'll talk at the end here. We're going to talk Thrive Fantasy, but if any of you want to jump on in, you can download the app. I put the link there into chat. They've got deposit bonuses. You deposit 10, you get 10. That's available for immediate play. You deposit 100, you get 20. Deposit 200, you get 50. That's immediate play. Money. Check them out. I've dropped the Bitly link. You can that'll take you both to their website, but the app is a little better for on your phone for play. It'll take you to their website, which is a safe place to download said app to your phone. All right, Adam. Our next game here, we've got the Golden State Warriors. We've got Houston and Portland. Let's start off with Golden State, Sacramento first of our two late night hammers. The Dubs favored on the road by 7.5. We have a 239 over under in this game, tops on the slate. We've got teams that play fast and loose. We've got teams that like to take a lot of shots. Start off here with the Golden State side. Is it a Curry night? Is it a Durant night? Or are these guys casualties of the Anthony Davis, James Harden?
Yeah, so I mean, it's just a really weird slate in that the games overall, not talking about this one specifically because this one's amazing, but overall the games on this slate aren't that appealing. But you just have all these stars in great spots that it makes it tough to figure out. Durant's presence is another reason why I just can't see getting to Giannis here, despite the ownership. You have Durant at a substantially lower price tag, and in a phenomenal spot against Sacramento in what should be a track meet. You should get more minutes from Durant most likely than you get from Giannis. He has nearly a 30% usage rate even since Steph Curry came back, and he leads the team in assist percentage over that stretch. He's not in the conversation with Embiid and Harden and Davis, but the price tag is appealing on him at 9,200 on DraftKings, 10K flat on FanDuel. On FanDuel, if you wanted to pay up, I think it's probably roster construction wise a good strategy to pay up for one of your small forward spots just because the position is so bad on this slate and you can lock in raw points at the top. But I would just much rather take Kevin Durant for 10K than Kawhi for 10-2 because I think Durant has the higher ceiling. I think he has the better matchup. And, it's just, to me, it's not really that close between them. So I do like Durant. I think it'll probably be easier to get to him on FanDuel than on DraftKings.
All right. Reminder for those of you, you can always rewind this show when it's live. You can always catch it after we air. It will be on demand there, available for you on YouTube. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up or a like. We're also going to get these converted going forward regularly and put on to our iTunes feed or our podcast feed, because we know a lot of you guys are out running around doing yard work, taking the kids to the park, doing some shopping, etc. Hey, why not bring Adam and I along with you? One, for the early bird, and two, you get the leisurely walk of a game-by-game look on the Awesemo DFS strategy NBA breakdown. All right. Wanted to throw out some numbers here, Adam, before we move on to the remainder of Golden State. This is Kevin Durant on DK. We're projecting him for 18%. The crunch is bringing him in at 29%. On FanDuel, he is 25%, and the crunch is bringing him in at 45%. Again, I've only set a 60% cap here just to see what would happen. I don't know that I'd play that much of him, but one never knows. And then on Yahoo, he's coming in on 32% of the crunches. I do like him at 45. That is $13 less than Davis and Harden, and that really starts to get intriguing because you can really bump up one guy into that mid-tier where you can upgrade a few of your $12 and $13 players into somebody that's in a more fruitful position. Again, as I mentioned, I think a lot of players are going to go for the Harden-Davis build over there, which leaves you $14 per slot, but so it is doable to go that route. What do you like here from the rest of Golden State? We have Klay Thompson, seems to be potentially heating up a little bit. Curry, very much on fire with his shot. Draymond Green, no. Basketball, the Monstars, they took his shooting skill, Adam. He does not have shooting skill anymore. What do you like here from the other three of the big four for the Dubs?
Yeah, I mean, all of them to varying degrees. It's really tough to get to Curry here at a higher price tag than Durant. But Klay Thompson is still very, very attractively priced. Assuming this game stays competitive, you should get around 36 minutes from him. And it's just a spot where he could go absolutely nuts. So he's also really appealing from a roster construction standpoint because, like I said with Durant, I really like Durant, but it's probably going to be tough to prioritize his salary over some other guys on this slate. And if that's the case, then saving money and going to someone like Clay and just hoping it's one of those games where Clay's the hot hand and Clay is just, jacking up shots the entire game, gives you, exposure to this high-powered Golden State offense in a great spot, while also not costing you a ton of upside and allowing you to, have access to the other superstars on the slate. So I think it's really useful in that way. Draymond's fine if you get him. Uh, he's shooting awful. You mentioned that he's not making the shots, and that's absolutely correct. But he's still averaging between 0.9 and 1 fantasy points per minute. He still rebounds. He still picks up assists, and the pace of this game is so appealing that I have no issues with whatever Draymond I get in my lineups. And then Kevon Looney, I think, is still a quality value play. He started out on fire against Houston. He was playing really, really well. Picked up a third and fourth foul to start the third quarter almost immediately and subbed out. And that's why his playing time didn't get quite to where we expected it to. Finished at 22 minutes, but easily could have played more. I expect him to play 26 to 28 minutes in most games. He's been plagued by foul trouble in his last couple, but that's not something that you can predict going forward. So I think that he is still a quality value option here.
All right. For those of you wondering about viewing today, well, of course, we have Live Before Lock at 6 o'clock. That will be featuring Fast Eddie Fair. We also have Live Before Lock at 3:30 for the NFL games. In the can, on demand right now, you can get Alex Baker, you know him as Osimo, Evan Silva, and Chris Spags doing their On the Contrary, their DFS strategy show. They spent almost 90 minutes breaking down the 4-game slate. Definitely worth a listen. And then we also have the Osmo Odds show, and you've got Ben talking about player props as well as breaking down the game from a betting and DFS perspective. So you'll want to check that one out. So lots of content out there available for you guys today as the NFL season winds down. All right, Adam, anything else from the Steve Kerr kids, or shall we move on to the Kings?
No, I think we can go over to Sacramento.
All right. De'Aaron Fox, not the best game logs in the last few games, but he's down to 7,300 on DraftKings, so he's most definitely back in the conversation. Not really a fan of Willie Cauley-Stein in this particular matchup. I think there are some other guys a couple $100 lower or a couple $100 higher I would be interested in at the center position on DraftKings. I do like Buddy Hield in this one. We are paying near his apex price point at 6,700. And then we have the specter of Marvin Bagley potentially returning. He's been out for a couple weeks with bruised knee. Let's assume, just for starters, Bagley plays. Who does this wipe off the Kings options?
Yeah, if Bagley plays, it takes a lot of appeal away from Bjelica because they play the same position basically. Like when Marvin Bagley was forced into the rotation, you immediately saw him just eat away most of Bjelica's minutes. He occasionally would pick up some backup center minutes as well, but most of the minutes come from Bjelica. So if Bagley is in, then any interest I had in Bjelica will essentially go out the window. If he's out, then I think Bjelica is a really, really good play. So that's pretty important news.
Okay, now if he, regardless of what he's doing, because it sounds like the most person he impacts directly is Bjelica, right? That's
right.
Okay. So how are you feeling about Fox? Price dipping a little bit, Hield price, back up a little bit. I'm assuming you're waving off the front court. What about the rest of the Kings here?
Yeah, I mean, Fox's price tag is really appealing. It's a difficult matchup. Golden State obviously is a good team defensively in terms of efficiency, but there should just be so many possessions to go around in this game that I'm much less concerned with efficiency than I am with pace. And Fox's price tag dropping because of some bad games. Everything's the same for him though. The usage is still there, the assist percentage is still there, the minutes are still there. So it's just been bad games from a young player. That happens. But jumping on him when his price tag is down is a really good way to capitalize on that. And I'll want to do so. Buddy Hield, on the other hand, he's a good play. He's fine, but you have his price tag rising at the same time that Fox is dropping. I think that ignoring the positions and how roster construction works out, the fact that there are cheap point guards we can go to, just in a vacuum though between Fox and Hield, if I can find that extra money for Fox, like he's the guy that I would rather go to just because he is the better point per minute player.
All right.
And I do have some interest in Willie Cauley-Stein. I think that the price tag on DraftKings is a little cheap at 6K. He's still a point per minute guy. He should play around 30 minutes here. The issue is that depending on what site you're playing on, there are two very appealing centers in the last game with Capella and Yusuf Nurkic. And also Cauley-Stein has been losing a little bit of playing time, going from like 34 minutes a night closer to 30 with Harry Giles reemerging in the rotation. You're seeing Costa Koufis play a handful of minutes, and then Harry Giles also play both as the backup center and alongside Cauley-Stein, which is making it just so Cauley-Stein loses a couple of minutes.
All right. Anything else, or shall we hit the second of our dueling nightcaps?
Yeah, we can move on to the Houston-Portland one.
All right. I'm trying to get up a player game log here. So, setting you up, we do have a fun one here. We've got a 217.5 over under. Houston is going into Portland. Portland is on a back-to-back. Both of their games were at home. They ended up losing last night to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Westbrook said he was taking it personal because they had not won in Portland, and I think it was 5 years. So that is a long time to not be winning. Let's see. We have James Harden, who will be. Let's. You know what? I'm just gonna turn you loose while I set up the rest of the stuff for this game. James Harden, phenomenal. 80 points is definitely in his outcome. He is averaging, good God, like 29 shots a game since Chris Paul's went down, or some ungodly number like that. I think his usage is at 150%, Adam? Something along those lines. What do you have here for the beard?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at like almost a 44% usage rate for Harden without Paul or Melo on the floor. He's played 212 minutes without Paul, Melo, or Eric Gordon out there this year. He has a little over a 47% usage rate. I'm not using that as my projection, but that just goes to show how high, the opportunity, or how high the ceiling is here for Harden. When you've played 212 minutes in these circumstances and you have over a 47% usage rate and over a 61% assist percentage, averaging 1.9 fantasy points per minute, that's where Harden can very reasonably get to here, playing 39 or 40 minutes. So that's why it's just so hard to get away from him, even at a rising price tag. From a medium projection standpoint, I'll plug him into like a 44% usage rate and up around a 56% assist percentage, because that's where, basically he's averaged without Paul on the floor this year. And it doesn't completely just break the slate for me. Projection wise, it still gives me a projection for Harden that is 5 to 6 points higher than Anthony Davis, and 5 to 6 points higher than Embiid if Butler's out. So I still clearly have Harden as my highest scorer on the slate. I still love Harden. It's just that this is the first slate where, with his price tag finally rising on DraftKings, he's already been expensive on FanDuel, but also with the other options at the top end, where I'm at least considering paying attention to how highly owned Harden's going to be, and possibly, adjusting to other guys. On previous slates, it's just been like, I don't care, I'll play 100%. And if he's 60% owned, 40% of the field sucks.
All right, here's where we're coming in. On the crunch of 100 here on Yahoo, he's coming in on 22% of my lineups. On FanDuel, we are projecting him currently to be on 14% of the FanDuel lineups. The crunch brings him in at 12. How do you feel about that for a FanDuel? You what do you want? If that ends up being the case, do you want to go 2-3 times the field?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing with FanDuel is that he's less expensive than Anthony Davis. And so Anthony Davis, actually, in terms of style of play, is a more appealing option on FanDuel than James Harden is, because Harden, you have to contend with all the turnovers, which obviously come as a result of him always having the ball, and you lose a full point for it. Davis, you get more blocks, which obviously contributes 3 points apiece. So from style of play, Davis is actually the more appealing option. But even factoring that in, I have Harden projected for 2 points more than Davis at a $100 less expensive price tag. And then if you look down the positions, at power forward on FanDuel, you have Siakam, you have Green in really good spots, you have Larry Nance, who we talked about. So there's other, there are mid-range options there that are appealing. At shooting guard, it's not quite as appealing. Like, you have Luka, you have Drew, they're both fine. You have, Clay, who's fine, but just less kind of jumping off the page at shooting guard in the mid range. So I still think that I would end up preferring Harden over Davis on FanDuel. The price tag is really expensive for both, but because you can drop a player, it's still not that difficult to get to one of them.
All right, pulling up Davis, we've got him. So basically, we've got both of them at about 15% right now. That'll change throughout the day as news comes in. The projected ownerships pulls in a variety of different sources and is constantly being updated. It'll be updated probably again in a few hours, and then it's usually updated twice within that 90 minutes before lock, unless something breaks with news. If there's an injury or something in that last 90 minutes, they'll update it each time there's something major. So just wanted to call that out. But yeah, I would have thought they'd be a little bit higher, but $13,000 and $13,100, those are crazy prices on DraftKings here. If we pull, let me see, if I pull both of them on, we got Anthony Davis. We're projecting him for 11. He's coming in at 3 on my crunch. We're projecting Harden for 16. He's coming in at 18 on my crunch. I will be playing more than 18% of James Harden. I will be playing more than 3% of Anthony Davis. I just got to figure out how I'm going to do that. Now, talking about some of the other options, you hit on Capella. I'm going to also want to know a little bit about Austin Rivers. The minutes keep going up, and did he really almost take 20 shots in that last game? That's Austin Rivers. That's the same Austin Rivers that went to Duke and his dad was a player and is a coach now. That guy? 19 shots. Yeah, is that what we want?
Yeah, I mean, he gets some open threes. Like, he's going to be an efficient shooter, or should be an efficient shooter, as long as he's playing in the system. It's just that as the price tag rises, like, you're not going to get much else from Austin Rivers. He really should not have the ball in his hands very much. So, he's okay. It's just that, at almost 5K on DraftKings, I think I can get more upside from similarly priced guys. 4,300 on FanDuel is still really appealing. Obviously, anytime you have someone that's cheaper on FanDuel than DraftKings, it is worth noticing. And the minutes are still going to be huge. He played 43 minutes in overtime, played about 38 in regulation. So, yeah, he's fine. If you get Rivers, it's fine. It's just that he's still not a really high upside guy. He's going to get some open looks from, James Harden assists, and that's going to mostly be it.
All right. You mentioned Capella. I like him as well. Anybody else here? Perhaps a PJ Tucker is the other guy that's popping. I've got him in 17% of the DK lineups in my 150 crunch. He's 4,100. We're projecting him for 8% ownership. Not horrible. There'll be guys for him to guard. Anything else from Houston?
I mean, so on FanDuel, where you have the drop, you still have $3,900 Gerald Green. He played 30 minutes against Golden State. James Ennis only played 8, so it remains to be seen kind of how quickly they ramp up Ennis, or if they're going to just stick with the House and Green combination. But at 3,900, since you can drop him, I think he's still fine. House obviously plays more minutes, but he's 4,700, so it's less appealing there. And then Capella, obviously I just really, really like. You're getting monster minutes from this guy. He is a little bit more productive on a per minute basis when he's playing alongside Harden without Paul. Price tag's still very reasonable, so I like Capella a lot.
All right, flipping the script, heading over to the other side here. Again, Portland is coming off that back-to-back. It was at home. It was a late fourth quarter collapse by them. They'll be back at it tonight. We've got Damian Lillard on DraftKings, 8,600. That's somewhat intriguing. CJ McCollum at 6,400. That starts to perk our interest. I like Al-Farouq Aminu at 5,000. He's coming up a fair amount in the crunch. And then I do like Mo Harkless. He is the one guy I wanted to point out here. In his last 10 regular season games against the Rockets, he has scored more than 19.5 DraftKings points in 8 of them. That's pretty solid considering he's gone over 25 in 6 of them. So he's someone I do want to consider at a reasonable price point. I'm guessing he'll start. Adam, even if he's not, he's going to be involved enough that I like him. It seems like Evan Turner's just more or less an afterthought at this point. So amongst kind of the two cheapies I have in my DK placeholder lineup, I do have Harkless and I do have Aminu.
Yeah, it really depends on the price tag. Like Harkless is up to 5,400 on FanDuel. I really want no parts of him there. Actually, on FanDuel, $3,600 Evan Turner is where I'd rather go.
Okay.
Even though, like you said, he has essentially, for the most part, he hasn't been playing big minutes. But at 3,600, like if he happens to have a game like he did last night where he played almost 24 minutes, then he just ends up being a reasonable value play. And if that doesn't happen, you can just drop him. So I'd rather play Turner on FanDuel. I'd rather play Harkless on DraftKings.
Yeah, at 44 on DraftKings it's pretty palatable. Would you go for Kyle? Just comparison standpoint, Kyle Anderson at 4,900 or Aminu at 5K.
It's really close.
It gets kind of interesting. If we get any word on Justin Holiday minutes, that could influence things.
Yeah, that makes a difference. But I'd probably lean Aminu.
Okay, that's what I have. I just wanted to check because slow-mo does have his moments, including last night. Anything else from this contest, or shall we talk a little Thrive?
Yeah, we can move over to Thrive.
All right. So, reminder, we are sponsored here by the good folks at Thrive. We do have a deposit bonus available for you. They are a player prop app, and how it works is you go to the website that I am dropping into Slack here. It's bit.ly/Osmo if you're listening, or you can hit me up on Twitter or Josh Engelmann. We'll get you the link. But you get you can download the app from there. This takes you to their site where you download the app to either your iOS or your Apple phone. You get $10 deposit bonus if you deposit $10. If you deposit $100, you get $20. If you deposit $200, you get $50. That's an immediately playable cash, so that's something that's worthwhile. So essentially what they do is they set up 20 questions generally, and you pick 10 of them, and they're player props. So it's either or, and then based on the probability of what's going to happen, there will be more or less points conversely for what you pick. So if we say Anthony Davis scoring 25 points or more, that's probably going to be 120 on the less and 80 on the more. So what you would expect from a prop type bet. So Adam, what shall we do? You want to do basketball or football?
No basketball contests today, so got to do football.
Okay, well, that means I'm calling up different projections than what you're using, so I can have a baseline. I am ready, good sir.
All right, first one we got Andrew Luck, 310.5 total passing yards, 105 points for the under, 95 for the over.
I am going to take the under. I think it's going to be close. He is personally my number one quarterback. Today, you can check out my write-up there for free on the front page of Osmo.com for the Yahoo tournament. But he's the guy I'm going for. I'm still taking the under. I'm thinking he could get there. For me, it's about a 15% outcome, so I'll take the under.
Yeah, I have the under as well, especially with more points there.
Yeah, and think about who's. Davion Clowney, J.J. Watt, the Honey Badger. They've got all kinds of playmakers on that Texans defense. So we could see things could fold quickly. But on to our next choice.
Somewhat related, but 90.5 total receiving yards for T.Y. Hilton, 110 points for the under, 90 for the over.
The projection I'm looking at has him at 97. I am still going to take the under. If I had to pick, now I'm playing him a ton because I'm pairing him with Luck, but if I had to pick, I'd take the under. Still worried about him being dinged up a little bit, and hey, it's football. Shit can happen.
Yeah, I have the under as well. Again, I think it's close, but 110 points for the under. All right, so from the other side, Lamar Miller, over under 80.5 rush yards plus receiving yards. 100 points either way.
I'm hardly playing him because Lamar Miller, when I leave him on my bench in season long, rips out my heart and shows it to me as he's scoring his second touchdown of the game. And when I play him, he goes out injured early. So I'm going to take the under. You're welcome, everybody. Now he's going to get the over. I got third. I got third in that league, Adam. I got third because he shit the bed in our semis, and that cost me.
Yeah. I got him at 84.5, so I guess I'll take the over.
All right.
Not feel very good about it.
If you took the under, I don't think you'd feel very good about it either.
No.
So.
Moving over to the other game, over under 227.5 passing yards for Russell Wilson, 105 points for the over, 95 for the under.
Oh, that is one hell of a number. Did you realize that on the season, Russell Wilson is averaging 216 passing yards per game? That is 22nd in the league. He has 35 touchdowns. That is 6th in the league. There is a dichotomy, Adam. I'm going to take the under, but if it was 2.5 touchdowns passing, I'd take the over. So I think they're going to move the ball rushing, but I think once again, when the Seahawks get inside the red zone, they're going to be passing. So I'll take the under.
Yeah, I'll take the over for the extra points at 105.
Okay.
All right,
The one I'm looking at has him for 227, so it's right in that mark.
Yeah. All right, last one, going to the other quarterback, Dak Prescott, 260.5 passing plus rushing yards, 105 points for the over.
That's a really good number. Dak averaged, I'm just going off the top of my head, I want to say it was like 19 or 23 rushing yards per game. So if we give him that, and he was a little bit better than Russell, I think he averaged like 236 or 231 passing yards per game. He looked good last week, but that was without Ezekiel Elliott. You know what? I'm going to take the over because the Seahawks are not the Legion of Boom anymore. So I'm going to take the over.
Yeah, I'm going to take the over. I have him slightly below, but with 105 points going to the over, I think it's close enough that it's worth it.
Excellent. Well, we're going to get on out of here. Reminder, we do have Live Before Lock NFL at 3:30 today. We do have NBA Live Before Lock at 6 o'clock today featuring Fast City Fair. Already in the can. You can get the Osmo Odds Show, which Ben, Rasa, and others break down the player props and betting for the NFL games this weekend. And then you get the Evan Silva, Alex Baker, Chris Baggs on the contrary. They spend almost 90 minutes breaking down the 4 games for this weekend. We got 4 hours till lock. Reminder, you can go to the front page of Osmo.com and check out the free article there by yours truly for the Yahoo $500,000 baller. I'm just going to quickly look here and see. They're running it rake free this weekend. It is, let's see, doing the math, 60% full. I would be surprised if it gets more than 80 or 85% full. So we will probably have some overlay in that, and they're not taking a management fee. So if you want to check that one out, or that article and that contest, go ahead and do so. Use promo code AWESOMO if you're making your first DFS deposit, and you get $30 deposit bonus match up to your first $30, and that comes in Yahoo player points, which are available for immediate use. Any final thoughts, birthday boy, before we get on out of here?
I'll have the deep dive article up sometime in the next couple of hours on Osmo.com.
With that, gamers, good luck.